Hello, welcome to this ONVR Modurol video. This is video MT03 in our series of XK8 videos detailing how we converted our Jaguar XK8 automatic into a manual. Now before I start the video, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the subscribers, viewers and supporters of the channel who've sent words of encouragement and messages. It really does make a difference. It's quite a daunting project, and having that sort of encouragement really does help. I've also had some support from technical specialists, which I'll go to later on in the video, which is really encouraging as well. So in the previous video I mapped out what the basic kit was. Since then I bought more bits which I've needed, the missing bits, but it occurred to me, rather than just buying the bits and throwing it all together, there's got to be some sort of logical sequence of doing things. I need to solve one problem before moving on to another. Otherwise I'll just get bogged down in a huge mess, if you would. So in this video I'm going to break down into the video into chapters or sections. First of all, talk about the theory of what we're doing, simplistically what I'm trying to do. Next I'll talk about the build sequence I'm thinking about, so it'll give you some idea of the process I'm following, and hopefully give me some sort of structure to concentrate on the first step rather than the last one, and hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier to do. Next I want to talk briefly about the choice of gearbox. I've chosen this Tremec T56 gearbox as opposed to the S-type manual, and the difference between that. I've sort of got my head around that now, and I'll show you why. Then I've got some problems I need to solve, and I'll try and explain those to you, and hopefully you can help me if you know what you're doing. I'd appreciate any comments or emails about any suggestions for how I can do that. And then lastly I'll have a little bit of a section about credits or thanks for all the specialists that have helped us. If you're considering doing this, these are the guys that are going to help you. Okay then, first of all, the theory. So in theory, my car is currently an automatic transmission. It's a 5 HP 24 5-speed auto, manufactured by ZF. My car is a 1996 XK8, not an R, not supercharged, and it's running the original version of CAN bus. Sorry, I've got a bit of a script here to help me. So the simple idea is just to take out the transmission and the drive shaft, very simplistically, then actually mechanically fit this new gearbox, a shortened custom drive shaft and a clutch pedal, which is what I'm doing here. That's the mechanical side, saying very simplistically and quickly, it sounds simple. Then electrically, as I say, we're on CAN bus version 1, taking out the automatic transmission throws lots of electronic problems, control problems, because the automatic gearbox is heavily monitored. It's actually got its own module, so it'll actually throw up lots of CAN bus errors, wrong gearbox, etc. So the idea then is I've got a black box, actually silver box in our case, and that, when plugged into the loom, should send signals to the TCM or a transmission control module telling it that the gearbox is still there. Very simplistically thinking. So that's the idea of that. It's not that simple. So what is my build sequence to try and make all this work? So first of all, I need to remove the transmission. So basically I'm going to remove the actual gearbox itself, which is reasonably simple, I believe. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to do that. But also I've got to remove all the J-gate controls out of the centre console, the drive shaft obviously, and the oil cooler lines. I'm going to take all that out. So I'll get into that, I'll show you all that. So that's step one, removing all the existing automatic support and the gearbox. Second stage then is going to be to source and modify and manufacture a new pedal box, which is the really interesting bit. I've got a new pedal box here, or a new second-hand pedal box. Interesting, this is the 4-bolt. I'm going to upgrade my servo while I'm at it, which is probably going to be the subject of another video, but I'm going to hopefully modify this to make it work, or there are lots of other ideas which I'll come into. Stage 3 or step 3 then. Once I've got my clutch pedal in the car, I need to test it works before I bolt the gearbox back in. I have bought quite a decent sort of low-rise transmission jack. I spent a bit of money on that, albeit it was second-hand. The idea being that this gearbox is going to come in and out quite a few times. I'm in no illusion that I'm going to have to take the gearbox in and out loads of times. So once I've got the gearbox, the clutch pedal working okay, then I've got to step 4 will be to actually fit the transmission and actually test it, ideally with the engine running, albeit up in the air, and make sure the clutch is engaging and disengaging and everything's working okay. There is I've got to set a gap between the clutch and the throw-out bearing, which I'm not quite sure how to do. So that's the milestone, if you would, or the problem to overcome then. Then step 5, I'm going to have to when you change the clutch pedal or fit the clutch pedal, the brake servo's got to come off, so all the brakes will need bleeding. So I'm going to have to do that. Fit the differential, which I'll come into later. Fit the drive shaft and actually get it up and down the drive and see if it'll power forwards and backwards. So that'll be step 5. Step 6 then, I need to refit all the exhaust. Obviously I don't want to do that this is the idea of the steps. If I fit the exhaust too early, I can't get the transmission off. Then if there's a problem with the transmission, I've got to take the exhaust off again. And you get the idea of why I'm trying to do this sequence. So step 6 then, refit the exhaust and then try and get this black box working. And in theory, if that goes okay, give it a bit of a road test, get it down and get it MOT'd. The further steps then, if that all works, I'll be really, really happy. In fact, I'll be ecstatic. The further steps I'd like to do, obviously, this black box thing is a bit of a compromise. I'd like to replace the ECU, which is another expensive step, but I really like to do that. I think there's lots of positives in doing that. And then step 8, obviously I'll have a manual gearbox, probably the brakes won't be quite up to it. I've got 205 diameter front discs and rear discs. It's not the greatest braking system, albeit I'll have an uprated servo. So I might go to the 325 upgraded discs. I've already got the caliper carrier to do that, or possibly even go the Brembo 355 diameter. But anyway, this is long distant plans. And then actually the suspension, will the suspension cope with this enthusiastic driving? Potentially I've got to upgrade the springs, etc. But everything is fairly new. I've refurbished everything, everything is rebushed to OEM spec, so maybe not. I've got cat suspension on this, so maybe I don't have to do that. Anyway, that's my sequence of steps. The choice of the gearbox then. Okay, so in theory you can fit any gearbox if you want to, any gearbox at all. Obviously there was an example which I saw originally when I was contemplating doing this. There's a guy, I can't pronounce his name, he actually converted an XJ8, the 3.2 version, using a BMW gearbox and drive shaft. I'll show you here. And he did that actually without using a black box or a piggyback ECU, which is really interesting. He basically left everything plugged in. I'm not quite sure how that all worked, but interesting. But normally with the XK8, or previously with the XK8, people initially use the T56, is what I've got, but then later they started using the S-type 2.7 gearbox, or the S6-53, because obviously lots more diesel S-types around than Aston Martin Vanquishes. So comparing the drives, if I'll show you here, basically the ZF version is in the middle there, and obviously in blue. At the top there you got in orange. I've presented the the Tremec T56 version, what I've got, that transmission is massive. It's actually really long. The output shaft is actually here. It's called the, it's a really fancy name, what is it? The T56 XL Magnum XL, or is it XL Magnum? It sounds fantastic name, that is. Absolutely fantastic. Anyway, it's really long, so it needs a shortened drive shaft. And there's a gearing issue, which we'll come into. But I believe the ZF diesel manual box, the S653, it's actually a little bit shorter than the automatic gearbox you're bringing out, and you can use a Jaguar drive shaft, a 4.2 litre drive shaft for that. But I say I don't 100% know that because I haven't got the other gearbox here with me to check it. If you know, please could you add it in the comments. Anyway, so I've got a bit of a summary table here. So the two compared. So first of all, talk about torque. The actual Vanquish, or this Tremec gearbox, I'm going to call it various things, but that's actually 415 pounds-foot torque, whereas the diesel Jaguar S-Type one is 442. So it's quite a bit higher spec for torque. The availability side. Obviously there's not many Aston Martin Vanquishes with manual gearboxes, and very few of them have been scrapped, so the availability of this gearbox is quite limited as opposed to diesel S-types. However, that's in the UK, possibly in America, the Tremec gearbox is going to be a bit more common. It's used in lots of high performance equipment, high performance cars, so maybe that's not quite the case in North America. The gearing then, this gearbox needs a 4:1 diff, no doubt about it, whereas the S-Type one doesn't need any diff mods, albeit you got to remember this XK8 doesn't have a limited slip diff, so that is a big problem, particularly if you want to drive enthusiastically, let's say. The gearbox mounting, I've got a modified bracket here. I believe the S-Type doesn't need any modification for the bracket. Both need custom flywheels. The exhaust fitment is different, which we'll come into in a moment. So let's talk about a little bit about gearing. So I'll show you here, I showed you this one in the previous video, comparison of gear ratios. And you can see here again, in first gear, this gearbox is really, really highly geared. Is it high? So basically you're going fast for the input revs to output revs. So first gear is very different, and to me, I don't like that. Hand reverse, if you're in a car park, it's going to be difficult to control. Clutch control may be a problem. If you see this graph here, I'll show you the graph. You can see all the gears are quite different, with the 3:1, or is it 3.06 if you're going to be technical, to 1 rear diff. You can actually calculate that this gearing as a top speed of, I think it's here, 198 miles an hour. I mean, I've worked that out basically on, was it 4,750 RPM, which on the standard car is equivalent to 155 miles an hour. That's how I've worked it out. So I think that's the RPM achievable, and possibly theoretically the car could do 200 miles an hour with this gearbox, but I don't think that's going to happen. So the idea really, if you put a 4:1 diff in this, I'll show you the graph here, it's the black line here, it brings everything back to normal. So that's definitely the route I'm going to go, and I'll talk about that later. So if we look at the two main differences for me, I was actually contemplating dumping this project. I know it sounds funny, but I think where I am now, the main differences I've got is I need to buy a diff, but if I went over to the S-Type project, the S-Type gearbox, obviously I've got to get a different that custom flywheel isn't appropriate because the bell housing is bigger, I need a thicker flywheel, etc. But I'll possibly go into that in a later video. The main difference is the cost. It's either the cost of the diff or the cost of cats. Obviously on the S-type diesel, the catalytic converters need to be modified to clear the big bell housing because of the dual mass flywheel on the diesel. The bell housing is quite wide, and it interferes with the cats. Okay, so looking at the cost of the both, you can see here, so a diff, which actually from the earlier Jags cost you just over £1,000, 1,200 quid, and the cats are retailing 1,200 to 600 quid, albeit the diff would have some sort of LSD in it. Okay. So that's the difference. So I'm thinking I don't need to dump the project because I've picked the wrong gearbox. I'm going to give it a go. I do want to have a limited slip diff, so changing the diff maybe isn't too big a deal. Okay, section 4 then, problems to solve. So what problems have I got left? So if you look here, I've got the gearing. I need to sort the diff out, or the prop. I needed this plate I bought to support the two-piece bearing mounting. Obviously I need the gearbox mount. I need to sort the gearbox mount. I don't think these are all problems. Basically the pedal box is probably the big one. So I need a clutch pedal. As you can see here, I need a third pedal. It's quite tight in the footwell of the Jag, so fitting one then in there is a bit of a problem. I'm actually just calculating pedal spacings. I'm measuring all the car's pedals. That's a bit daft, but that's what I'm doing in a minute. So I've got several options. I can either purchase or adapt an XJS pedal box, which you see here, they're retailing anywhere to £650. I can actually adapt an auto pedal box, sorry, an XJS manual box was the previous one. I actually adapt an old Jaguar auto pedal box. Interested in Camp Chaos Chronicles, I'll put a link here. He's done lots of videos about doing that, and it's really interesting, quite doable. And then thirdly, I can modify and add the mechanism to an existing pedal box. On the XK8 it uses a plastic pedal box, and the idea is to fabricate metal brackets around it and add the pedal into the same pedal box. I think that's probably favourite at the minute. And lastly, I could actually buy or design and manufacture completely new pedal box, i.e. fabricate a steel one, and that's what quite a few people are doing, including Swallow's Jag, which you can see here. And I think their pedal box is something like £700 plus VAT, something along that. So those are the options for the pedal box. But what I've done, I bought a second-hand unit, and I think this is actually a 4-bolt servo unit. In theory, my existing servo is 3-bolt, and they actually upgraded this to get, I think for the per millimetres of the pedal travel, it gave double the pressure. So there were some complaints on early cars that the pedal travel was too long. So this is the upgrade for that. So at the moment, I'm on the CAD comparing all these different ideas, and I'm measuring this up, and I'm going to make a decision what to do. The next question is finding the correct clutch. So basically, as you can see, I've got this custom flywheel, and I got a Tremec T56 gearbox with a 26 spline output. It's and a 3/4 pilot shaft, if you would. And I need to understand what clutch is to go in there. The previous guy who sold to me said it had a GM Holden or a Monero, a Vauxhall Monero gear, clutch in it. but I don't think it's that, because I think when I researched that, their clutches are 11 inch or 11.5 inch diameter, and this modified flywheel, actually the PCD of the clutch clamping plate are actually 265 millimeters or 266, which turns out coincidentally to be 11 and 5/8 of an inch, which is quite common on GM Chevrolet applications. So yeah, I think it's possibly it isn't a Monero clutch. It's probably a GM clutch, but I really need a bit of help with this. I did email various clutch manufacturers or clutch suppliers, and the one guy, which I'll come into later, he actually gave us the lead here. I'll show you here that there was a GM Chrysler clutch at 10 to 10.4 inch diameter, which had the same PCD, and that was probably the one. So I've got a bit of a lead onto it, but I was a bit concerned because I've also got a throwout bearing already, whether the clutch, whether it needed particular clutch fingers, because I believe the fingers are on the end of the clutch mechanism, if you would, they either can be round or flat, so I wasn't sure whether that was a particular problem. Plus the overall depth of the clutch, I think I've got about 75 millimeters of spline length free, and I'm not sure if I buy a clutch it might be too thick, it might be too thin, really no idea. So if you've got an idea what clutch to put in it or how to work it out, I'm really interested to find out. This is really the investigation side. But also the actual on the clutch surface of the flywheel, I'm a bit concerned because it's actually two-piece. There's actually a line, which I'll show you here. It's actually two pieces, which I'm not quite sure why. And what I believe are the clutch clamp plate bolts. When I spoke to clutch suppliers, they told that you need to fit shoulder bolts. I'm not sure why that's the case. And I've also got these counterboard holes. I've got 3 counterboard holes. I'm not sure what that's for. There are threads on the other side of those counterboard holes to the drive plate, so the twist plate behind it. I'm not sure, they're missing them. I'm not sure if I need them or not. And finally, I've got an issue with Spigot. So at the end of the input shaft, there's this 3/4 pilot diameter. This needs to be supported by a bearing or a bush, ideally in the crankshaft or within the flywheel. I did actually measure the inside of the flywheel there. It's actually 2 inches, which I believe is to locate on the end of the crank, and I'm not sure whether I fit a 2-inch bearing in there, or actually there's space in the actual crank itself, because I believe there's a bit of a spigot on the end of the torque converter that engages in the drive shaft, into the crankshaft. So really, until I get it out, I'd be interested in anybody's idea there. I think the initial cars with this mod had sort of bronze bushes in, oil-filled bronze bushes, but if you know which bearing it is, I'd appreciate that help as well. So there you go, there's some of the problems I've got to fix and help I need. So I have had help already, and I'd like to just thank those people briefly. So first of all, a big thanks to Daniel and Les Graham. I work with Daniel in the company I work for, and I would say he's instrumental to me doing this kit, so thanks Dan. And his father, Les Graham, he's done a Jaguar XK8 V12 manual conversion, so he sent me loads of documents and some suppliers to look at. So yeah, thanks for getting me started, guys. I'm not sure I'll be thanking you in the end, but secondly, Jaguar Specialties. Andrew there, immediately I said I was doing this project, he was sending me messages inquiring, and lots of positive vibes from that. So thank you very much for Andrew. I actually contacted Steve at PVE Engineering, and he's the guy who he did the drive type XKR ECU change, so really influential with this mod. If you're not familiar with his channel, it's Tuning Shed, and he's done a really interesting video about the CAN bus ECU problem and how he solved it. So I'll put a link here somewhere to that video, but he's been really helpful, just giving some brief advice. One thing I was a bit perplexed with this box of tricks, I wasn't sure how I was going to work the Spigot, because there's lots of outputs for this from this gearbox, but I'm not sure how I'd integrate that to the Spigot in the car. But it turns out the Spigot in the car is actually driven by the ABS system. So as long as I get the ABS not to fault out, I should have a Spigot, which thanks Steve for that one. But I believe, well, I'm probably going to be knocking on Steve's door eventually. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, Steve, but to get an ECU for my car. Anyway, thanks so much, Steve. Next was the clutch people I spoke about earlier, MacLeod, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But there's a guy there called Billy. He was really helpful, replied to my daft questions, and hopefully I think I've got somewhere near the clutch, but I'd like, or the clutch specification I need. I'd just like to have it checked out. Then finally, big thanks to Ben at Simply Performance. Heidi, as I say, we spoke at length about the gearing, and he's helped me specify a very special differential. But yeah, more of that in another video. So thanks very much for Ben at Simply Performance. So, and obviously before I finish, there is actually another guy, Tom Lenthal, the originator, I believe, of this kit some 12 years ago. Been asking Tom some questions via email, and he's replied to that. I appreciate that, Tom. I know you're really busy and probably thought you'd never see this kit again. I'm not sure quite what I'm doing, but any help is appreciated from Tom and all the other specialists. Thanks very much. There you go. That's the video. That's where we are to date. I really need to get the grips on removing the gearbox, and then have the guts to rip all the ancillaries out, which will be, yeah, that's the point of no return really. And I'm in parallel with trying to design, or at least measure and draw up the pedal box, then look at what options I've got. If you've got a pedal box solution, I'd appreciate some advice. I say Camp Chaos Chronicles have lots of details in his video. I'm trying to copy some of that and fabricate something up. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you find it interesting. If you're contemplating this, yeah, give you some idea what you've got to get involved with. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe for more XK videos.